Welcome to the Crafty Mini, and in this one I've been doing a lot of practicing on some different techniques and things, just trying to come up with some quicker ways of painting for these tabletop ready miniatures for this fantasy RPG game that my friend's running. And so with this one I'm just going to show you the process I came up with for this particular type of flesh. Now it is more of like a Caucasian tanned, but you could do this on darker skin tones and even like other skin tones like greens, reds and such, and just follow the same principle. It's just the initial mix is what's going to make it different. So I've just been practicing with it, doing a couple of little test pieces, and this seems to be very quick and it gives a really good result at the end. I'm using Pro Acryl paints for this, but you can use any you want to use. So I'm starting off with light umber and just getting a nice even coat all across. So I've thinned the paint slightly on the palette and I'm just getting this as a nice even coverage. Let it dry. If I need to do 2 coats I will do before going on to the next step. Right, so for this the continuation of these clips, you'll notice on the top left there is my wet palette. That's just so I can show you the ratios I'm mixing and how I'm mixing it, because it's quite a simple way to follow here. So what I've done is I've put a little bit of tan flesh on the wet palette now to mix in with that light umber. It's 1:1, and I'm just working my way through and getting a nice even mix. And you'll see occasionally I'll dip into the little reservoir around the edge of the wet palette if I need to thin it slightly. And the first layer is going straight on top of this, and I'm just hitting all of the areas, leaving the very deepest recesses around the actual miniature on all the flesh. So things like the creases underneath his chest, and like the creases on the muscles on the arms and things, all of those are going to be left in the original umber mix, and then this 1:1 mix on top. And the idea of this was I was coming up with a way of doing a really nice sort of Caucasian, slightly tanned flesh tone that was really quick and easy to get onto the miniature, and also leaves a really nice depth of colour on there as well. Right, so at this point you'll see that I'm mixing a bit more of that tan flesh in there, just to brighten it up a bit more onto that original mix of 1:1. So now it's roughly 2:1, and I've thinned it slightly. And again, we're going to go and do the exact same thing and hit more of the highlighted areas. Now on a miniature like this with the stomach and things like that, because it's a nice rounded area, there's some really cool areas to pick out. You just make sure that the paint's been watered down slightly, so the paint's smooth as it goes on. And I'm just going around and picking out all the big areas. So his big belly, his sort of chest muscles, and then the roundness on all the muscles on his arms and things. In the sort of creases where he got his one resting arm, in the crease in there, I'm not going all the way, leaving that quite dark on that original mix, the 1:1 mix, and not bothering with it, because we're going to cover this up in a bit, and we're going to make it so just give a bit more depth, and the focal point is the centre of his body and his face. And you can see just going through and picking out little areas, not going all the way up to where I've originally painted, because I don't want to cover it completely. I still want to leave a bit of that 1:1 mix there, so you get a gradient from the shadow to the light. And I've just left some footage here. This is still the exact same mix we're working on, but just showing you on the back of the model how I'm picking out some of the folds in the flesh and things. Again, make sure that the paint is thin, so it's running off the brush nicely. Also, don't be too alarmed. You first put it on and it looks really bright and like it's going to be too much of a contrast from the previous step, but it dries a lot darker. And just go through and just follow the process. You can't go wrong with this. It's a really quick and easy way of doing this type of flesh. Right, so at this point you can see there on the wet palette, so I've basically just added more of the tan flesh in, so we're roughly 3:1 now, and I'm just picking out the highest areas on each of the muscles. This is where I'm going to start picking out his face details as well. There was no point in doing the previous layers on there after the initial base coat, because they're just going to get covered up, because there's only like the bridge of his nose and his top and bottom lip to actually pick out because of the beard and the mask that he's got on. So there's certain little areas that there's no point in painting them until you get to the higher highlights, because you're just going to paint over them anyway. And then here, because I've got an extremely thinned down version of the mix that I'm using, and you can see I'm just hitting the curvature of the belly. It's getting pretty much covered all the way over until you get to that where the belly sort of rounds under towards the belt. That'll get a bit less on there, And again, this looks really quite stark and contrasty when it goes on, but it'll dry a lot darker when it's finished. Right, so at this point I've let that completely dry, and you can see there I'm using what's called sledge sauce. This is in a little squeezy bottle. I've made this myself. This is based on a recipe from another channel, Sledgehammer Studios, and I've mentioned it before on the channel, but it's Lamy and medium, 1 full pot of Vallejo Painted dark tone and a full pot of Reikland Flesh Shade, and you mix it up in the bottle, and it goes on really dark, but because of the Lamy and medium, it sucks into all the little recesses, all the bits of detail, makes everything pop and give it a bit more definition, but it doesn't stain heavily, which is nice. And so you still keep a lot of that original colour that you've put down. Now again, like the paint, when it goes on, you see it going and it looks quite dark, like and it's going to stain, but it really won't. Just make sure any areas that it pulls up, that you move it round and get it out of any sort of flat areas. You don't want any sort of coffee staining or tea staining that can happen with washes. Just keep moving it around. To be honest, most of the time you don't really need to do that, because of the amount of Lamy and medium in it. It's making the wash move further and into the recesses. It's basically creating a lower surface area for the wash to sit on. And it's honestly, it's a really good wash. It's a cracking wash that does like everything. It can do absolutely everything. If you want something basic just to put on to give it all a bit of definition without killing the colour too much, this is a really good wash. Go and check out his video on it, and he goes through the explanation of the whole process of how to make it. It is very simple. It's just 3 pots of wash into one bigger pot, and just shake it up, and it never splits or anything like that. Right, so at this point the wash is pretty much fully dried now, and you can see here, so I'm going back into my original mix of the highest highlight, just adding a bit more water on the brush just to get that mixed out, and then I'm wicking off the excess on the towel there, and this will just give us a really nice glaze sort of consistency to put over on top of where we've put that wash, just to lighten up some of those areas that need a bit more and give a bit more contrast in the highlights. So again, the stomach, because it's the main sort of focal point, it's this huge fleshy area, his pectoral muscles, and then just going around the miniature itself and picking out certain areas. And you can see I'm not going right the way up to my previous layer, and leaving things like the belly button stained and stuff like that, and it all adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of contrast to the miniature, and just makes it pop a little bit more. And I would say for a miniature like this, where the predominant colour is going to be the flesh, whatever flesh tone it'll be, it's a really simple way of just getting a load of contrast and sort of variation onto your miniature, because sometimes it can be a bit difficult if you just do a nice skin tone, a couple of different layers, and then whack a wash on, done, and leave it at that. It's not bad, it works, but if you want to get a bit more smoothness and blending in there, these are the next steps, where you just thin down that highlight layer again and go back in and just start blending through all the bits of the miniature and picking out those key areas, and it just makes it pop a bit more. And again, it's just like before, this is the same layer, but you can see where I'm just going in now and picking out some other areas. So still using the same mix, that watered down highest highlight, and going back on top of areas that I want to punch a little bit more and just picking them out. So little parts of the hands, some of the folds on the back that are facing up towards where the light source would be, anything like that, just to make it a bit more prominent. And again, you can see I'm adding water, wicking off the excess, and then going in with the brush and just adding those bits on and picking them out. Right, so allow that to fully dry, and then exactly the same again. So I've the highest highlights, I've got more of the tanned flesh in, heavily watered that down again, wicked off the excess onto the paper towel, and going in now and just hitting really fine areas around the miniature, picking out some of the bits that I want to have a really punchy highlight and showing off a bit more. And this is just going to add that huge amount of contrast that goes on. Now as the paint's going on, it's looking really bright, but because we've gone from a mix of, so from the umber to the umber and tan flesh with various highlights, and now we're just using tan flesh and going over it, you're going to get this really nice gradient that works through the miniature. And then this final step to really make the skin sort of pop, on my wet palette there I've got some Vallejo satin varnish, and I leave my brush in the water, so wherever much water is held on the bristles, that's what I use. Mix that in with the varnish just to water it down, and then I'll put this all over the skin, and it gives a really nice finish. It actually dulls the pinkish of the colour a bit down, which you'll see in the final shots in a second. But it unifies everything, because you've got different finishes with the Pro Acryl paints to the Sledge Sauce, and then being thinned down paints. There's all little variations on the miniature, and then this, like a wash would with colours, putting a varnish on just ties everything together. And what I use is like a basic rule of thumb is matte varnishes for cloth fabrics, satin for skin, and gloss varnish for anything that's like glass or things like that. So I've finished off all the rest of the miniature, all the little colours and things for all the accoutrements, but you can see here it all comes together. Overall, I think it pops really nice. You get a nice texture, thinning the paints right the way down to like a glaze consistency. You get a more even split. The shadows, I think, don't look too harsh. There's a nice contrast between the light and dark, and it comes out as a really nice tone. Now you'll see with the rest of the miniature, apart excluding the axe blade, but everything has been matte varnished, all the fabrics, and it makes the satin varnish on the skin pop a little bit more. So using those thinner blends and just keeping to those two colours, mixing them in and getting progressively higher, and then once it's done and you've unified everything with that wash and then glazed on top the thinner and brighter coats to get that extra bit of definition and colour pop, that's when you go in and add that satin varnish over, and it just ties everything together, because your eye will notice all the little bits of variation in the like the different textures and the different finishes from the paints and the washes and things, and it just brings everything together, and it works as a unifying sort of finish over the entirety of whatever area it is you're painting. But hopefully that's helped people. You like this kind of video, just some little things that I'm messing about with and trying new stuff, but thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all on the next one. Cheers.